Hi, it's good to see you all again. I remember 3 years ago we started this way in this place. Maybe it was a bit more than 3 years. And it was right in the middle of the crisis. It was 2016. It was countries were closing their borders. Countries were erecting fences. Over a million people went through Greece and up through the corridor, and the situation was quite different than today. And now today we are happy that it passed. We are reminding ourselves how things were at that time, so you can study the phenomena. But also we are not really sure that it's over. I can't wait for the questions and answers period when I'm going to ask my colleague Tsarouchas about the latest statement by President Erdogan that if you are condemning me harshly and if you're stopping the arms supplies or any way stopping support for our interventions in our safety zone in Syria, etc., we will send you 3.6 million refugees. So these threats came again. What's important, the team that is working for this, on this project and on this publication perfectly understands, but for the students here and for the guests, it's important to see that this is actually the ugliest face of politics that we are studying. This is the most cynical and most unpleasant aspect of humanity, I would say, in dealing with refugees, not as people, not as human beings, not as families, not as people escaping conflict, but as numbers, and even worse, numbers that are conducive to manipulation, and numbers that are used for political gains of countries along the road, not really taking into account the conditions and the destinies of these people. Why I'm saying that, I really feel unpleasant to remind the audience, but in the face of history we have to study it and we have to see how these events went. At that time we had the Syriza government in power, which in a way wanted to punish the core Western European countries for the hard deal that it got, the difficult times that it got with the financial crisis, and opened its doors freely, and it was also in line with the ideology of the ruling party, to people to pass. At that same time, the Dublin mechanisms, the entire asylum system broke down. So whatever was being built for years and years, it was a paper tiger. Actually, the common asylum system, it broke down. It couldn't handle, one single country cannot handle 1 million people asking asylum, and then distributing it to the country where they wanted to, waiting for the decision, and arranging the transport for the people. I mean, that system was built for peaceful times, for regular times. In this kind of situations, it couldn't work. But also, it was a time when, in the core of the negotiations with the European Union, there were statements like from the colorful minister Kamenos, who said, if you don't accommodate our requests, we will send you hundreds of thousands of people to Western Europe, to Berlin, to Paris, including possible jihadists. So this was the cooking of the situation, coming to high pressure and making all countries along the route deal on themselves with the situation, because Brussels was paralyzed. At the summit that Chancellor Merkel called, it was somewhere 2015, 2016 in the winter, she invited the Western Balkan countries for the first time. They sat on a summit with the German Chancellor, and she invited Prime Minister Orban as well and several other neighbors who at the very beginning said, I don't know why I'm invited. The only thing I can contribute is donating a fence. the other prime ministers said, you know, by the very fact I'm coming here, I'm losing points on my elections which are coming. So everybody was trying to escape from the issue, and everybody was trying to deal with the issue on their own, because they saw that the central mechanism is not working. Referendums for rejecting the quotas, outright rejection of the entire way of handling of the situation. And as you remember, there were two blocks, one led by Germany and the Chancellor, not Germany per se, because Germany was divided, of course, on this issue, and the other by the Visegrad countries, joined by Austria as well, and supported by Kurz, who was at that time foreign minister. I recall a statement in which he is accusing Germany for being controversial and cynical in their migration policy, inviting people to come and then supporting in the back door countries along the route to close the borders so that not too many people come. So on one side, I'm open, I'm inviting everyone, we are opening our borders, but on the other hand, I want to control the situation. So this was, I mean, politics at its core. It's the ugly face of politics, but we as political scientists and students of politics have to see it in the mirror and have to recognize it. So just as a background, we are always talking about migrants and refugees. You very well know that there are two different types of categories with different level of assistance, different protection under international law. So that's why maybe it's the best term to use is mixed migration flows, because adding to the numbers of real refugees, which were, by the way, coming from the camps in Turkey, we had a lot of people joining in the wagon. I remember when I was doing the interviews with the police officers and the army on the border, they saw a lot of people who obviously are not from Greece, speaking Greek, people from Africa, with Greek leaders of the pack. So what was the situation? Actually, they were workers working here in the fields, in agriculture, and said, why would I work with less money here when I could join the wagon, arrive safely in Germany, and only the asylum benefit that I will receive each month will be higher than the salary I get in Greece. So we witnessed a very mixed phenomenon of people traveling. 1 million people passed through my country and then on the north. And you have to have in mind, in the first days, there was no evidence. Even in the first days, there was no right for them to legally transit the country. So we had terrible tragedies in which 30 people got hit by trains and died because they couldn't legally travel through the country. They were illegally entering and illegally exiting. So under pressure from civil society, the government, through parliament, made a law on 72 hours of legal transit through the country, in which you can apply for asylum or not apply for asylum, just continue your route. Out of 1 million people that passed, only a dozen, by mistake, applied for asylum, thinking that with this paper they have to apply, that it's not an option, it's an obligation. So they applied and they got stuck in a transit center in Skopje. They escaped in the middle of the night. Nobody wants to stay. So we were a transit country, which is especially intriguing if you compare this to this hysteria that was being made at one point in our political crisis, that these people will stay, these people will, whole cities will be built for them, these people, you know, will change our setting, and all of these nonsense. You know, we couldn't even provide, actually they didn't want to stay for 7 or 10 people, less than talking about hundreds of thousands. So these people were clearly on their way to Western Europe, clearly wanted to go through as fast as possible. I put on the all of the legal background of the situation. It was interesting that we have a strategy for facilitating integration of migrants and refugees. The one between 2008 and 2015 was primarily targeted for Roma, Ashkali, and Egyptians from the region, because we were not expecting such a phenomenon to occur. So when we made the second one, from 2015 to 2023, people started wondering, oh, is this the settlement of new refugees coming in, or is this, what is going on? So the government was under heavy attack on this issue. Although the UNHCR states that the country does not yet meet international standards for the protection of refugees and does not qualify as a safe third country. So a lot of work has to be done. So the crisis actually was happening at a time where we had the bilateral tensions with Greece on the border. You remember the scenes at Idomeni with the refugees trying to enter, the police trying to stop them and organize them through a single entry point. Because we, at the beginning of the crisis, we didn't even know who was entering. You know, you could spell only the name Muhammad in 12 different ways, let alone to have all the subtleties of where is the person from. People are coming without documents. Even if they have documents, they have the right to claim that they don't have them because they want protection. You have to have Arabic speakers. You have to know and try to do interviewing on the border to see what is going on. You have child trafficking. This is a very serious thing, to have such a large number of unknown people passing through. So we had to make the passage through one certain point, and we had to start at least registering the people. And then as time passed by, things got better. They started biometric registering. They started sharing the information upstream through the corridor. But at the end, the decision to gradually close down the borders and finally the deal between the EU and Turkey sealed the corridor. Otherwise, 1 million people passed through with 50% registration the most, and this registration, it's questionable how correct and accurate it was. I will not go into the domestic political scene. You can read through it in the book. Professor Krastev's idea stick to my mind in this case, that in the old EU member states, the migration crisis actually divided societies in the people that said, yes, we have to open our arms. I read the statistics about Germany. 1 in 7 Germans actively volunteered their time and their resources to welcoming the migrants. And the others who said, no, this is too much, we have to be careful, we have to keep our values, traditions, etc. So it divided societies. But in Eastern and Central Europe, it united societies against receiving these people. In most of the cases, not everywhere, of course, this is a generalization. So as a reminder of the ideological blocks, you remember how the situation then went. This group was supported also by President of the Council, Donald Tusk, who saw the danger that this situation brought for the unity inside the European Union, and they actively supported the closure of the borders. And it was strange situations, these people came to Greece, which is a EU and a Schengen country, but then they had to transfer through North Macedonia, which is non-EU and non-Schengen, and Serbia as well. Then they had to go, Hungary blocked the border, they had to go through Croatia, which is a EU but not Schengen country, and then Slovenia, and the road is open. But they passed so many regimes through their travel. At one point, Frontex came, the European border police, and they settled on our border with Greece, and they settled on our side of the border, trying to see what is going on, how things are managed. And the mayor of this border city was there with them, and the German press, very big attention by the German press at that time, because they were expecting these people, asked the mayor, what is going on? And he says, the EU is defending itself against the EU. Because in a way, the Frontex officers were there, people were coming from the EU to a non-EU country and then continuing their road up. This crisis really showed all the differences in a very, very stark contrast. A very stark contrast like I don't remember before, between these two really different approaches to handling the crisis. And it showed the powerlessness of the Commission, you know, when they suggested and ruled on the quotas and then they didn't happen. And it showed how much European coordination is needed. It showed that we do not exchange intelligence information or even simple security information on these people. The registration was done 4, 5, 6 times instead of one entry point registering the people and sending it to their colleagues. It really showed the disunity of the European Union and its communication with the countries that are about to join or are in process of joining. So it was a look in the mirror, and at the end, geopolitically, the deal with Turkey sealed the pipeline for a while, but let's see how long this will stay. Thank you. I'll be glad to receive your questions.